Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just gonna do a video on Ephesians and the book of Matthew. Just kind of bored, actually. I'm playing golf at 3 o'clock, but the Players Championship got canceled, and so I would normally watch that, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and so it leaves me with more time, which is a good thing. And it made me think of this verse from Ephesians 5:15-16. See that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And so, for people out there who have as much time as I do, and with all these like lockdowns and quarantines and all that, maybe we'll have even more time. Ephesians 5 is a good chapter, good verse to think of. To read and figure out, what are ways that we can do what it says, redeem the time, because these days are evil, and they certainly are. So it looks like all these sporting events are being canceled, all that kind of stuff, and that's a major problem. Normally, like a virus or something like this, which I don't actually believe it's physical, it's just media hoopla, but from God. God sends all the delusions. If it's a real virus, God sent it, and if it's a quote fake virus, God's behind both. But a normal economy would just be able to handle this, because recreation, entertainment and all that would be a small part of the economy, like 2 to 5%, 10% at most. But we have another major issue, is that is a huge chunk of our economy. And really, I would put the news in that as well, the quote news, CNN and all that. And so I would say a majority of our economy revolves around entertainment. And I'd lump Facebook and Instagram and all that in that. So that's why this is very, very dangerous, and it doesn't really have to go on for very long. It looks like sporting events are being canceled, a month or two out, NCAA tournament, and the Masters and all that. So, even if it just lasts for a few months of just, things slowing down, that will be, in my opinion, a fulfillment of Bible prophecy, where it says the grinding will cease. And, which is the Bible's way of saying the economy will be slowing down in the end times. And then it also says in Ezra that, people will desire to go into a city, but they will not be able to. And so it looks like those things are happening in real time, literally right in front of us. And like I said, it doesn't take like years and years of that continuous, prolonged slowing down for the Bible to be true in that prediction. It just needs like a little while, like a month or two, because again, a majority of Americans, like myself, really are living paycheck to paycheck. And people are lucky to be in that situation. I want people to understand that people just getting a paycheck are lucky, and then people living to paycheck are in still a fairly niche group of people. And then there's people who just have, wealth, historical wealth, or wealth they've accumulated in this life that are not as affected, because they could take care of themselves for their entire lifetime and their kids. But that's a very, very small group of people. And so a majority, let's say, 50 to 70%, and that might even be conservative, of Americans rely on their very next paycheck in order to, meet, bill requirements, paying bills and all that kind of stuff. So, and it's the same with companies. I just posted a video about zombie companies. There's 16% of companies that are quote zombie companies, which their operating cash flows cannot even support their existence, like interest payments and all that kind of stuff. And so they're obviously interacting with the rest of the economy. And so 16% is just a huge number. And so if those companies affect any of these kind of slowdowns, are affected by these slowdowns in the same way as humans that are broke, the trickle down effect will be severe as well, because companies that interact with them will, have to also react and slow down as well. And so this is all I'm saying, is it doesn't really take much to make this house of cards fall, and it looks like we're living in those days. And so another point that I wanted to mention, and this is just me being very upfront about my beliefs and what I've shared, is that I believe that God's elect are taken away and then there's a 3.5 year Great Tribulation period. And the Bible says in Matthew 24:37-39, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. In this case, the taking all away will be the elect. In that case, it was the reciprocal, where those, quote, taken away were the, quote, evil people. And so it's similar in that regard. And so, and the Bible says when Christ returns, he will return the way that he left. And, two people will be standing there, which are the two witnesses, in Revelation 11. And so this event, which is described here as similar to the days of Noah, where people are kind of oblivious to that. To me, those days are running out. And even if this coronavirus kind of goes away, let's just say there's two options, that it goes away in the short term and things just kind of go back to normal. That's still, that's very much possible. And it just kind of deflated the bubble a little bit, in stocks, and oil prices dropped and all that. And that was its purpose. And then it just kind of things go back to normal, which I would say is likely, and I would say supports my narrative the most, because we need a relatively calm time, like it says here in Matthew, when Christ returns. Or it's like a medium term thing, and like, let's say on the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, that it's prolonged and affects the economy. To me, American economy, which is interlinked to the whole economy, worldwide economy, cannot sustain that type of slowdown. Absolutely not. No one would argue that. That's just, it would become very, very, very noticeable if the economy slowing down isn't already. And then beyond that, 1 or 2 or 3 years, absolutely not. Then to me, it's not the Bible narrative taking place. It's simply the coronavirus slowing down the economy, and then food shortages, and then that's it, and then, I don't know, there's nothing really, there's no room for the Bible to speak and do the things that it talks about, the plagues, the famines, God's elect being taken away and all that. To me, I don't see how there's, quote, room for that, because at that point, even the, quote, elite will be struggling, to survive. And so forget about the upper class, the middle class, and definitely not the poor, and then the homeless, like, will all be gone. And so that's why I think it's such an amazing time that we live in. Whether this virus is real or fake, the implications of it are right in front of us, with all the hype, all these events being shut down. I live in Houston. The rodeo was canceled. I'm assuming the next thing is the golf course that I go to will shut down. And then for me personally, there's nothing to do. Like, literally, if I already wasn't in a position of being bored, this is just the icing on the cake. And so, I can't sit, and I hope that other people are in the same position as me. We can't sit around waiting for the government to figure this out when we know that the government is completely evil. Like, how can anybody with common sense, believe that the government cares about like 100,000 people getting the flu, when the American government has been absolutely annihilating people worldwide over drugs and oil and guns and, profits and all that kind of stuff? Like, it's not funny because it's people's lives, but it's so ridiculous, the narrative at that point. And so if the churning really does, the grinders cease, as the Bible says, and people are kind of working remotely and then all that, it's just a major issue as well for people in this gig economy who rely, at least they had Uber and Lyft as a chance to kind of break even or make some money. And so if people are not even like leaving their place, then those people are struggling. And then really the foundations are the last little bit that was left in place for people to, quote, make it, subsistence, to survive. Then this thing could get ugly really quick. And the reality is that it wouldn't take much for a lot of people to not be able to survive. And it would only take like a few weeks, of food shortages and all that kind of stuff. So to me, it doesn't leave room for the Bible to be true at all, that America is Mystery Babylon, and then, it will experience a judgment as ancient Sodom and Gomorrah and all that kind of stuff. So that's why, again, I believe that this is all happening for a particular reason. And this year, pretty much to me, has to be the year that Christ reveals himself, as it says here in Matthew 24 and in Revelation and really the whole Bible, because the American economy is hanging by a thread. And I'm watching all these stocks and stuff, and like from the quote elite's perspective, they have no issues with the stocks dropping a lot. They like it because the people who have money waiting, rich, quote, very, very rich people, they're just buying stocks that are super cheap. And then they're happy with that, as close to zero as it can. Because what I've seen that people are doing, especially these oil companies, their CEOs are buying more stock now. And so they're going to buy. So if a stock was selling at $20 and now it's selling at $2, they can buy with the same amount of money, they can buy 10 times more stock of their own company and own more of it. And so they like these things. They're happy about it because, again, they don't need the money to stay alive. Stock market goes up or down. It doesn't affect their livelihood nearly as much as it affects us. And so they're fine with that. And that's what's happening. And so this is, again, all these like major ups and downs and all that are to create two classes of people, rich and poor. And that's Bible prophecy. And so I want people to know that this is very much consistent with the Bible narrative. And to me, there's just not that many more of these, what we call pump and dumps that can happen, that the corporations can sustain, because eventually corporations have to lay people off. And in the very least, people, even if they're not laid off, they spend less because they see uncertainty. And then that slows down, everything. And then if people just don't have money to spend, they won't, the whole U.S. economy is based on that, a majority of it. And so this like $1.5 trillion bailout that Trump is planning, let's just say that Trump put all that money into the stock market to prop it up. That doesn't affect us. Like, that doesn't mean that we can go and pay our rent or do anything. And let's just say, hypothetically, they took that money and then divided it amongst all the people in U.S. that needed it. That would maybe support us for like a month or two. If you just take that number and divide it by maybe like 70% of the U.S. population, let's just say 200 million people, you're not going to like be able to live off that for the rest of your life. And so really there's almost nothing they can do, with this economy. They could just print, $1 trillion every 6 months. And then, that eventually, obviously, when you print that much money, the money becomes worthless. But they could only sustain this thing for short periods of time, short bursts. And so they have no choice. It looks like that they have to do that to support the stock market. And it looks like they did that today to rescue it from this sort of free fall. But, that doesn't affect us on the day-to-day. It doesn't help us in any way. And even the quote best case of putting that money right into our accounts won't do anything. So they've really run out of options. This is just the way the economy is. It was just designed to fail because a majority of the companies that are in existence don't serve a human purpose, except, in my opinion, to create rich and poor. And then for people who understand the Bible narrative, specifically the end of it, the world is against God. They're preparing for God's return and to actually fight against God himself, Jesus Christ, like it says here in Matthew, the Son of Man. And that's why they're doing all this stuff. That's why oil and gas is such a big part of everything, and the military and defense and, technology and all that is so exalted, because all that stuff is needed for this final battle against God himself and God's left-hand side here on earth. And may we not be on the earth at that time, because that's a bad time for anybody to be on earth. And so, that's really the way I see it, and it's becoming more and more clear that the God of the Bible is kind of being put into a corner more and more. And then there are also other verses that say that he will come as a thief in a night, which is, night means darkness, and evil, but it'll be somewhat unexpected. And so to me, the more this goes on, especially in America, which is supposed to be one of the better places to live, more developed, all that kind of stuff. If there's chaos and confusion here, I mean, really the whole world would be in a position to scratch their heads, and be seeking God's return. And so there's less and less days, in my opinion, that the Bible can come true, because it says that it will be still a bit of a mystery, when God will return, and only the Most High knows that date. And so, to me, that's, if there's confusion and chaos and food shortages in America, I mean, the whole world's going to be like in a desperate situation. And so there will be many people, whether they're sincere or not, or care about God or not, are going to cry out to God, for deliverance, asking him, why is this happening, and all that kind of stuff. And so looks like hopefully this lead up creates more and more of that, fervor and interest in God and where he stands in all of this. But it would be very obvious, when there's food shortages and people can only eat once a day, once every other day, and stuff like that. So I think that very interesting year, I would say, that we live in. I would say for spiritual people, for me personally, the battle is just, don't be happy about, other people's demise, or even our own. We're living in it's very, very obvious, very, very obvious, especially if you're a flat earther, that we're in a scripted reality. And so we have to go through it. But I also want people to know that don't go through this like a majority of other people, because they have no faith, and I'm talking about even religious people, the Christopher Greens and all that, prepping and all that. Like, we obviously have to take care of ourselves and other people, but the most important thing is to have a spiritual understanding of the goings on earth, and major things like this corona thing, which is quote worldwide, affecting governments, leaders, Hollywood, athletes, and all that. Everybody's towing the narrative. God's behind this kind of stuff. And so we take a tremendous amount of comfort in just God's existence, and then he's behind these kind of things. And then we want to be with God. People, we're not going to politic to stay here and fight other people for resources. Those people have to do that, because God's left-hand side is programmed to survive at all costs. And all they're running into literally is God himself during the wrath of God, destroying everybody, everything. And so, we don't have that urgency. We have the very opposite mindset, is we want to be on the other side of that, with God as he cleans up the earth, and we don't want to be a part of that. And so our mindset should be literally 180 degrees diametrically opposed to the way people think, or really don't think, here on earth. And it's just like Ephesians said, Ephesians 5:15, not as fools, but as wise, walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. And so this world is completely foolish. It's completely faithless. People who believe this narrative of the coronavirus are just completely out of their mind. That's insane, that we would believe that this system cares about people over profits. That's crazy. We used to joke around at Schlumberger, they have people, profit, and technology was their slogan, and it was always people first. But if you just know anybody who's worked there, or works really in any corporation, that's gone now. That's only like 10 or 15 years that it's taken for that to dissolve. And so profit has been put first, even over technology. Even if the technology, ingenuity advancing and all that, no one cares about that anymore. It's just purely profit and for the top, and then that's it. And then the other stuff is a nice to have, and those have disappeared. There's no ingenuity, technical ingenuity, really, and then there's no care for people at all. And so anybody who believes this government narrative that the government actually cares about people, 100,000 people catching the common cold, that's insane. That's literally insane. And so to me, again, we live in those kind of days, because it's very clear that it's becoming obvious that we need salvation, and we need salvation from the government beast system, and it's not just religious people that need it. Everybody, it seems like is going to be in this position very soon. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.